Let's start with a word of prayer. Loving, kind Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you so much for the learning and understanding and the things that we can get from the information. Help us to know how to be skillful and tactful and understanding how we can help others with these things as well as ourselves. So then that way we have testimonies ourselves and that we can give to others. We're taking from you to give to others. So Father, we ask for your wisdom and guidance at this time, and that my words would be clear and that we'd have good understanding. I thank you and praise you for hearing this prayer, for it's in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so the first thing we want to look at is cancer. So the definition of cancer, what do you know as the definition of cancer? Anybody, well, you guys would probably have a different definition than maybe they would.
Yes.
But in your own mind, what do you think of with cancer? Do you think that this is like, oh no, like this is like a disease that I know I'm going to die, right? Some people have that mentality where if they get cancer, they think it's a death sentence. But we're seeing more and more people being able to get reverse from this disease as well. Sometimes when people are in stage 4, it's very hard to get them to have a turnaround. My best friend, well actually most of all my brothers and sisters too, have had cancer. And so I've lost a lot of people in my family or close to me that have had cancer. And so cancer is basically a complex group of diseases, and that has possible causes. I think that there's 2 main ones. One is parasites. The other is where they had something that got into their system, like a virus or something, and so that started the whole thing. Maybe they were injured or something, and that started some problems, because to me inflammation is also one of the big things that we see for a lot of diseases. And so with this, the causes of cancer include genetic factors. This has become like the biggest thing ever, especially when it comes to research for medical stuff, because they think that genetic factors are like the number one thing. What do? They test, and they test. But wait until we talk about next week, when we talk about the genetic and the breaking the genetic code and looking at lifestyle and stuff like that. You will see next week when we talk about that with the group of people that we'll be working with on those specific things. That lifestyle is really the biggest thing, such as tobacco, their diet, physical activity, and certain types of infections, environmental exposures to different types of chemicals and radiation. This is huge. People may not even know what kind of building that they actually work in, and I think that's what happened to my friend. She worked in a building where a lot of people that worked there for over 5 years would get some form of cancer. And so environmental exposure seems to be huge. Diet is one of those biggies, and exercise, but also chemicals is another thing. And I think my family probably got it from the farm. And so we're seeing that. So cancer, again, your body's made up of 1 trillion of living cells, and these cells, they grow, they divide into new cells and die in an orderly fashion. That's just the cycle of a cell. But we also see that when you are young, these cells divide faster and allows you to grow, whereas as you get to be an adult, these cells divide only to replace worn out cells or dying cells to repair those injuries. So this process is going on all the time. Every 7 days, every 7 years, you're like a new person. So the cells in each part of our body have a ongoing cycle. And so depending on what cell it is, means that those cells are going to be dividing, making more of them, and being able to do their job, do their work. So this is kind of a interesting thing, because I have now looked into cells as my main thing. If your cells are sick, you're sick. If your cells are not well, that means we got to make them well. And what feeds the cells? Our food. What can contaminate those cells besides food? Our environment, our minds, lifestyle, our chemicals, our environment. So those are like big things. Even, 35 years ago, we were taught that whatever cells that you have in your brain, that's all the cells you're going to have for life. But that is a myth now. because we found out that the brain actually clears out those old cells and creates new cells, so then that way we have the cells that we need in our brain. But if that process is not working, that means that they would get Alzheimer's, or they'd get Parkinson's, or something like that. So if that happens, then we realize that the cells that are dying are staying inside in the brain, and they're not being eaten up and carried out. So if they stay in the brain and they're dying, that means when they touch these other cells, they start dying also. It's kind of like if you have a whole big basket of mangoes, or maybe we should say durian. This is the durian capital. So if we got a whole basket of durian and we don't even touch that for a couple months, do you think one of them might get rotten?
Yes.
How about in 1 month?
Yes.
So just say one of them gets so rotten that it gets affected and the other ones get affected by it too. I don't know, it's a pretty hard thing. So, I mean, if we use apples, it's a little easier for them to get rotten faster.
Tomatoes.
Same with tomatoes.
Yeah, that's why I was going to say mangoes, because, you know, those are soft, and they, right away, once they start getting bad, they'll start touching the other ones, and the other ones will start getting bad as well. So same thing's happening inside of our brain cells. When one starts dying and it doesn't get cleared out of the brain, then that dead cell stays there, and these other good cells are around it, and next thing you know, they die too, and that's how they get Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So it's not replenishing. So with cancer, it starts in the cells, and they grow out of control. That's exactly what cancer is. It divides, and it makes more very fast, very quickly in most cases. Some cases it's a slow growth, and then over a period of time, if something happens or whatever, then it starts going crazy and starts developing more of those cancerous cells. So there's a thing called a mother cell, which is part of the cancer. And so if she goes into hiding, and you have a pathologist in there looking at the cells, and they say, oh yeah, these are dead cancer cells, that person is clear of cancer because they had surgery, they're good. But then if that person now goes and has more chemotherapy, what's going to happen is that chemotherapy is going to make the mother cell so mad. And she's going to come out, and she's going to be more forceful. She's going to be producing even more than before. And when that happens, that's not a good thing. We had a man that came to UG Pines before I went there, and he had cancer. 17 years later, he decides to eat meat. Probably because family says, oh, you know, you're good, well, you know, it's not going to hurt you, da-da-da. You know how that is. You know, people that should be supporting you and saying, hey, you're doing great, keep doing it. And then over a period of time, maybe you get tempted. And so he started eating meat, and he says, oh, I'll just go back to UG Pines and get another fix. Well, we can't really help fix you. It is growing so much more faster because that cancer now has been woken up, and now it's going crazy. So it starts out of control. It becomes out of control growth abnormal cells. And so the cell growth is different from normal cell growth. Instead of dying, the cancer continues to grow and form new abnormal cells. And so they invade and grow into other tissues and are very much out of control. They're wreaking havoc everywhere. And so it's probably even spreading, which would be metastasized. And so from one area to another, and sometimes when it metastasizes, that's really bad. It's even harder to control or to take care of. So what's taking place here is that the DNA is damaged, and those cells and the repair process is not happening. And therefore, instead of the cell goes in to make new cells, and then that the body doesn't need, and these cells have the same damaged DNA as those first cells. So that's basically carrying that DNA from the cancer and reproducing more of the cancer cells. So these things, what we can do, number one thing is to add a plant-based foods. Number one thing is make sure that we get our food right, because that's one of the main things. It's the foundation to fix the cells. And, you know, plant-based food, you think that's sugar? Oh yeah, we can have cocoa, raw cocoa, whatever, coconut sugar, yeah. Oh, we can have probably cane sugar. For me, whenever we use cane sugar in the States at Country Life, which is a health food store and vegetarian restaurant where I used to work as their doctor, every time I ate anything that had that cane sugar in it, I gained weight just like that. Like I would eat some of the food that had it in it. That night, I was big. The next morning, I was like, I don't know, a couple pounds heavier. You do that for a whole week, I gained over 5 pounds in 1 week from eating cane sugar. So, no, I'm not interested in that no more. No more. So, number one thing is we got to feed the cells so they're well. And so, in order to do that, we need to make sure that we're eating a plant-based food diet. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't taste good. It doesn't mean that we can't add any flavor to it if it needs a little salt or a little something with it. We can. And we'll talk about that next week when Shaw does the food demonstrations. So we're focusing on whole foods, whole grain, not white stuff, but whole grain. So your black rice, your red rice, your brown rice, what else you got? Wild rice. I was told that you guys have a lot of different types of rice because when I preached one Sabbath, I was talking to the people. I said, look, and this is in the Philippines. I said, can you imagine what it would have been like to be the Israelites coming out of Egypt and then God rains manna and provides food for them and they're eating the same thing for every single meal all the time? Do you think you'd get a little tired of eating the same thing? And then I opened my eyes a little wider and I said, oh my, I'm in the Philippines and we eat rice at every meal. So I said, you guys already passed the first test. That if God rained down manna for you, you'd probably be fine. Because you'd be happy with it. Just like you're happy with rice, right? Except be a little sweeter, nice tasting. Because they said manna had a little sweetness like honey with it. So food is one of the most important things that we can do. And the first thing for food is digestion. And I want to add this because if we're eating our food, we need to chew, chew, chew. And the reason why we have to chew is because we have to break it down first in our mouth. This is the very first part of digestion is right here. The enzymes in the mouth, the spit or whatever, right? Once that works with the food and breaking it down, then now that whole process can really take place. And of course, then we can have some other stuff here that may be not right or right. And so those are other things too. So we need to make sure that we're eating food closer to the original form. Other things that we need to understand when healing your body is that plant-based food is the best. Vegetable juicing, crucifix vegetables like Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, greens, onions, and carrots. Now, my question is, how many of these things do you get here? You can get all these things. I've been to the store. However, what are some of the things that we can find here in the Philippines? You got lots of greens. You got your moringa. You got these leaves from the sweet potato.
Spinach, local spinach.
So we've got a lot of greens that we can use that we have available here. And so that's where those greens come into play. You can get onions and garlic. Those come to play. So my thing is always utilize what things we have available and then use those things. Because that's what's going to make the difference. Fruit juices, apricot, blueberries, cherries. I don't think you got too much of that here. Papaya we have. Peaches I'm not for sure. I see red grapes and strawberries.
How can you extract juice from papaya?
You juice it.
Bro, you can smoothies.
Smoothie.
Juice na juicer ba?
A juicer.
Hindi ko mabuhan man, malata man.
Sure.
I don't have that.
Malata man.
You can.
A juice din na.
Just like peach juice.
Ang kapayas?
But it'd be better if you do like a full smoothie type thing.
Mas guwapo.
But strawberries actually are pretty dirty.
Apil siguro.
They're most of them are actually sprayed on. Sha'll talk more about that. And then herbs that are really good is astragalus, bilberry. I'm not for sure if you can get those. But garlic you can, kelp you can, hardiaco I'm not quite for sure. Red clover I'm not for sure. Seaweed you can, suma I'm not for sure. Maybe. Yellow dots, I haven't seen it. Wormwood, I haven't seen it. Another name for wormwood would be Artemisia. Are you familiar with that? Skullcap, and there's others. But these are the main ones. So cancer, the things that I use for cancer, the number one things that I use for cancer, and I'm sure you can get it here: spirulina, chlorella, CHOLLERA, chlorella,
Spirulina yun.
spirulina, chlorella, and then wheatgrass. If you go to SM Mall right down the street, upstairs, you walk down one thing and there's a guy that has some stuff, and right next to him is a candy shop. So you can't miss it. He's got a health stuff there, and he's got a lots of that stuff there.
Is that
Healthy option.
And then of course there's healthy options downstairs.
Oh, alright.
They're a little more expensive, I think. So you can see cross prices for which one might be better. So those are the things that I say number one: spirulina and chlorella and wheatgrass. I always give that to all my patients because they're super greens. Super greens are so important. The reason why super greens are so important is because what it does to the body is it changes your acidic body into a body that is what's the word? Alkaline.
Basic.
So we're changing the body from acidic to alkaline. And so when we have an alkaline body, our body is healthier. And so we don't want to get too far off either, because you can go from one extreme to the other extreme as well. So we want to make sure that we're fighting there. These are some foods. If you take 1 tablespoon of turmeric and 1/2 cup of soy milk, and then you use your crucifix vegetables, 2 cloves of garlic, and 1/2 cup of onions, 1/2 cup of grapes and berries, citrus fruits, and 1 whole fresh tomato, and put some omega-3s in there, which would be like flaxseed, chia, and grind that all up. These are the things that are really good also to stop the growth of these tumor cells. And these foods will actually reduce carcinogen potential and will induce tumor cell death. That means they interfere with that process of the blood supply to that tumor, right? So we want to make sure that we're cutting off the blood supply so the tumor will not be able to grow. It'll actually shrink then. You want to avoid all fats. One thing that I found here in the Philippines this time that I've come, because I've been in the city a lot, is fried foods. Fried some more. Everything's fried. Everybody likes fried food. Fried food is going to kill you. Too much fried food is not good. And yesterday when we were at the mall, I talked to a couple girls. There's a car company called BYD.
Yeah, BYD.
Because the car looked like a Porsche. I used to own a Porsche, convertible actually. And I walked over there and I talked to these 2 gentlemen, and I said, wow, that's only $26,000? And you're selling it for $1 million, whatever it is? And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cheap. And then I went over to the other side where the girls were, and I started talking to them. And so she goes, what do you do? And I said, I'm a medical doctor, and I'm here to help the people in the Philippines to reverse their diseases. And she's like, wow, thank you so much for coming to help my people. I appreciate you. And I said, well, one thing you need to understand is you eat too much fried food, I said. Too much fried food, because as women, we have too many organs here. So if you eat too much fried foods, especially French fry, oh my, you're going to have problems with you might get cancer of the ovaries, anything that's going on in here, bad menaces. So these are things that we have to, take into consideration. So avoid all fats, especially fried foods. Research indicates that folic acid may prevent cervical cancer, and when taken before conception, may reduce spinal defects in newborns. So if you're pregnant and all of that, you may want to make sure that you increase the folic acid. Obesity is a factor linked to cancer as well, because most people that are overweight have a high-fat diet, low fiber, and those 2 things are the main things when it comes to cancer. Wheatgrass protects against radiation treatment and should be part of the diet. Add soybean products, beans, millet, and brown rice to the diet. So we're seeing some good things here. Psyllium is a deficiency that's linked to cancer as well. So more than likely, they're probably low in that. I think one thing that's good that you can get that in is pumpkin seeds. High amounts of vitamin A, C, and beta carotene are essential. And if you think about it, vitamin A, what types of colors is that in the rainbow? Vitamin C, beta carotene, all of these things. So we want to make sure that when we're eating, our food should be a rainbow of colors. We shouldn't be just getting browns or whites or greens. We need yellow and orange and red too. So we have to make sure that we're getting a full array of that, because each one of those colors have main vitamins in it. So when we eat the colors, or if we eat the same things over and over, I think I was eating a lot of greens and rice at one period of time, and I got sick because I wasn't getting enough vitamin C from the other colors. And so we did this test that took 90 seconds. You put your hand here, and this light thing penetrates for your, I don't know what it was, something. And yeah, I was low. I was like 40,000, and 50,000 was like good. And then after 1 month, I changed my diet and I put in a bunch of other things, and got checked again, and I was over 70,000 on that thing, which is like super high, super, super healthy. So very important that we make sure that vitamin A, C, and beta carotene are in our foods, or we're actually taking that as a supplement with selenium. Lastly, here's a bonus, garlic and lemon supplement. What do you do and how do you make it? You take 1 heaping tablespoon per day for 3 weeks. And then you take a break and repeat it 2 to 4 times a year. Depending on how sick you are, this is what you do. You take 30 peeled garlic. So a clove, take 30 of those. So if your garlic has only 6, 7, or 10, that means you're going to have, if they're 10, you need 3 of those, right? So you have 30 of those peeled for garlic. You take 5 small lemons. So if you're using calamansi. So if you're using those little ones, you're probably going to have to make maybe like 7 or 10 of those, probably 10 of those, right? And you would use that. What you're going to do is you slice the lemons, remove the seeds, place in a large blender with the outside, right? That's why it says organic, because you want the outside too. You're just going to get rid of the seeds, but you're putting the rest of it inside your blender with the garlic, with 1 liter of water. 1 liter of water, you blend it well. Then what you do is you pour it into a pot, you put it on your stove, and you boil it. You bring it to a boil. Once it boils for a minute or so, you shut it off, and you just let the mixture sit there and let it cool. After it's cool, you put it in a glass jar, and you put it in your refrigerator, and you keep it cool. And then what you do is you take out 1 heaping tablespoon, and you take that every single day for 3 weeks.
Before meals.
Yeah, before meals. You can take it in the morning when you get up. If you take it right before meals, you can do that as well. But taking that every day will be very, very helpful, because garlic is one of those things that fight against cancer. Very, very good. Because in garlic it has this thing called allicin, allicin, and that is the component or element that helps to fight cancer and to stop the blood vessel from feeding the tumor. So let's talk about diabetes. I have here, remember, diabetes is not a disease, it's your lifestyle. That's what causes diabetes, is your lifestyle. So change it and avoid having diabetes. So if we can, in order to reverse that, we have to change the lifestyle. So when we look at diabetes, we see that many symptoms is prediabetes. Did you know that 1 out of 3 people are pre-diabetic and don't even know it? 1 out of 3 are pre-diabetic and they don't even know, most of them don't even know that they're pre-diabetic. 1 out of 6 people have full-blown type 2 diabetes, and it's out of control. So that's a lot of people in the United States anyway. I'm not for sure how many people here in the Philippines, but I do know that we always get people that are diabetic. Every single session we've had, we get people that are diabetic. We've had a few that have had cancer. And a lot of people, in one session we had a lot of people with high blood pressure. Can't remember the last one. We had a whole lot of different things in the last one. But diabetes is one of those things that we're seeing a lot of. Even in Alaska, once they got the highway that went from the United States to Alaska, that's when we started seeing people in Alaska get diabetes. And you know what? Most people think diabetes is from high sugar doses. And so I'm here to tell you that's probably from fat. Fat and sugar combined is a bad, deadly combination. Because people in Alaska eat a lot of blubber from the whale. So they have a high fat diet, but they never had diabetes or high blood pressure or high cholesterol.
You have no choice.
So we think that high fat could be part of it. But we do know that eating a lot of fat can be part of the problem, because once this sugary stuff came on that highway, that's when we started seeing all of these diseases start happening. And so, yes, a thing by itself, especially fat by itself, is not good. Sugar by itself is not good, but the combination together is even worse. So when we see blood glucose levels are higher than normal, but not high enough to be diabetes diagnosed, is pre-diabetes, for anyone that doesn't know what pre-diabetes is. So if you have someone, like my mother was a borderline diabetic for many years, probably like 39 years. And so at that period of time, I took her to UG Pines, and then we went home, and for 2 years she did good until, I don't know what happened, I probably left for somewhere, and when I come back, my brother took her for ice cream. Free ice cream, why not? Let's have some ice cream. Are you kidding me? She has ice cream. What is ice cream made out of?
Milk, sugar.
Milk, sugar, and fat,
Fats.
right?
Lord.
Combination.
And what does Ellen White say?
Fat and sugar. Fat.
She said that is a deadly combination, right?
Milk and
Milk,
sugar.
egg, sugar. All right, that sounds like cake and candy and cookies too, huh?
Yeah.
So we've got to be very careful what we're eating. Like that pie
Oh.
was not a good thing. That probably had sugar in it. It had fruit in it, and it probably had milk in it or eggs in it, right? So we've got to get rid of that and replace it with something better. Something better. We have to figure out how to make it better. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to make these things even better and taste as good, if not better, so people will want to be on the program. They want to have this life change forever. Because we've got to get our taste buds ready for heaven. I mean, when we get to heaven, you think Dorian's good? You think some of the fruits that you have are good? They're good. Don't get me wrong, they're really good here. And the States are not as good. But here, they're really good. And so my thing is, if it's that good here, I can't even hardly imagine what it's going to be like in heaven. You know what I'm saying? Our taste buds have never tasted what real good food tastes like. Because we're at the last end of this earth's history. Adam and Eve, they know. They know what they lost. They know what they were eating. And then being in that sinful way, and how the food probably got worse and everything else. I'm sure it probably was okay, but I'm sure it was harder. So what's happening here with diabetes is that the cells are becoming resistant to the insulin. And how that happens is basically, is there a thing on the other side? Let me just turn this over for a bit. Uh-oh. I don't think I can do it. Maybe you can flip it. Does this thing flip?
Hindi siya mag-flip
No,
sa
maybe not.
pitas.
No.
Oh, hindi.
Yeah, it does.
Or you do this maybe?
Baliktad.
Oo, mag-flip.
Correct siya.
Adjust naman na taas o ibabaw. Dili siya ma-flip.
Mag-flip.
Parang
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Magsulat siya.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess I'm over here. So basically, if we draw these cells,
Lock and key theory. Insulin and sugar.
okay, so what's happening with this cell is that nutrients and oxygen can get in, O2, and nutrients,
Clears out here.
nutrition, and then out is waste, right?
Mhm.
So this is functioning well. So this is a normal
Morphology.
cell, right? This cell here, what we're seeing is that it doesn't have very many of these,
Layers.
what do you call them? They're broken and they're blunted. And so what's happening here is this one here is starting to get damaged. And so
Viscera.
it might be a little hard for it to get in because this is part of the inflammation here. And so the receptors here, these receptors are kind of receiving some stuff, but it's not as good because it has this inflammation. Now this one here, there's hardly any of these receptors. So what this is like, the insulin can't even get in. Because it's kind of like saying, you have a nice house, a brand new house, but someone came and they changed the lock.
Structure, yeah.
So now you can't even turn your key. You put it in the lock, but you can't turn it because it's like it can't hear, right? So if you have somebody in the house, they can't hear to open the door.
Yes.
So that means your stuff is not getting in the cell. So what's going to happen to the cell is this is disease. Disease, I can't even spell. A disease cell. So this could be like type 2 diabetes. It could be like high blood pressure. It could be, whatever, right? And so what's taking place is that when your cells are damaged and they're diseased, the insulin can't get in. The cell is not well. So when the cells are not well, that means that now the tissues are affected.
Yes.
And once the tissues are affected, that means the organs are affected. And that's where we're at here, because this is your heart, this is your pancreas, right? And so these organs now play a major role. And so if our tissues and our organs are affected by the cells, and we're not making sure that the cells are well, then we have big problems. And so this is a huge key when we're understanding the body and how to take care of it and making sure that it's going to be okay. What's that? Okay. So these cells now are becoming resistant to the insulin because the insulin can't get into that cell, and this causes damage to the circulatory system as well as the heart. Because most people that have type 2 diabetes over a period of time, they start having heart issues. My mother did. And your eyes, because of the circulation. And so your feet, you can't feel your feet anymore. You get neuropathy.
Yeah.
Now it's showing the inflammation with your nervous system. Everything is starting to just like fall apart. All the cells, almost like cancer in a sense, but it's different, right? Similar but different. And so another thing here is the metabolism disorder diabetes is where you have type 2 diabetes. We need to digest our food for energy. And another thing is we're not eating right, then these things happen. If we eat good foods, some people can eat really good foods, but they still get sick. You know why? Because they're not chewing. I have this little saying that says, chew, 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 because it's good for you. I eat fast because what's a 30-hour break for lunch? 30 minutes. I'm sorry, 30 hours. I meant 30 minutes. 30-minute lunch break. You guys have 30-minute lunch break? That's probably like 10 minutes. By the time you get down, warm up your food, and then sit down and eat, you just got 10 minutes, right? And then it's just like, I gotta see one more patient before I can go eat, So it's just like you get into this habit of eating so quick that you're not chewing your food properly, so it's just going through the system, and it's not really feeding the cells anyway. So, you see these little third world countries where the little kids have these big stomachs and they don't eat. What do they call that? That means that they're malnutrition.
Obesity.
Kwashiorkor.
No, they're skinny. They have a big belly.
Kwashiorkor and
Nutrient deficient because they're not eating.
In my tongue.
Malnutrition. Here's the thing: people in America, they're real big too. They got these. They're real big and they're fat. You know what they're malnutrition to? They're just eating foods that are packaged or whatever that is not even recognized as food. And that's the problem. Most of our food nowadays is not even recognized. What I've noticed lately in the stores in the United States is that foods that you once trusted and was eating from, now they've joined the ranks of GMO.
That's marasmus.
Yes.
Kwashiorkor versus marasmus. The one is vegan in nutrition.
Uh-huh. So if we're looking at our foods today that are packaged, whether it be cereal or whatever, if you're looking at these things, read the ingredients list and keep going down, 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 and you will see it'll say foods here were manufactured in a laboratory or